Seth Rollins is back and he's out for blood. Hold up, hold up, hold up. If you haven't seen what just went down on Raw, you need to see this right now because Seth Rollins just made a shocking return and absolutely destroyed Bron Breakker backstage in the most brutal assault we've seen in months. And honestly, the fact that nobody's talking about how this changes everything for the entire Raw roster is absolutely insane to me. This isn't just another backstage brawl, folks. This is the beginning of something massive, and if you stick around until the end of this video, you're going to understand why this moment might be the most important thing that's happened on Monday Night Raw all year long. So here's the thing that's been driving me absolutely crazy about this whole situation. Seth Rollins has been away from Raw for what feels like forever, and just when we thought he might show up at some big event or some major pay-per-view with a huge announcement, he comes back in the most devastating way possible by targeting Bron Breakker. And here's what makes me angry about this whole thing: WWE completely kept this under wraps. Nobody saw this coming. Not the fans, not the analysts, nobody. And that's exactly what makes WWE brilliant sometimes, because they pulled off the shock value that we haven't seen in years. Now before we dive into the absolute chaos of what happened backstage, I need to ask you something that's going to blow your mind. Did you expect Seth Rollins to return this week, or did you think he was going to wait until the Royal Rumble? Drop your answer in the comments below because I'm genuinely curious what you all were thinking. This is the kind of thing that separates the superfans from the casual viewers, and I want to know where you stand. Let me paint the picture of what went down, because if you missed Raw Live, you're about to have your mind blown into oblivion. There Bron Breakker was, doing his thing, looking like the dominant young superstar that he's been positioned as, completely unaware that Seth Rollins was lurking in the shadows. And then bam! Out of absolutely nowhere, Seth comes flying around that corner with the intensity of a man who's been waiting for this moment since the day he left. The way he attacked Bron wasn't just aggressive, it was personal. It wasn't the kind of attack where someone just throws a few punches and walks away. This was a full-on assault that showed Seth has something deeply personal against the young Judgment Day member. The thing that really got me heated was watching Bron try to defend himself and honestly just getting absolutely overwhelmed by the veteran's experience and intensity. Seth didn't just want to hurt Bron, he wanted to send a message to everyone watching at home. He wanted to let the entire Raw roster know that he's back, and he's not coming back to play around. He's coming back with purpose. He's coming back with intention. And most importantly, he's coming back angry. Here's what's absolutely wild to me about this whole thing. Bron Breakker has been protected as this young up-and-comer, this generational talent that WWE is building the future around. And in one moment, Seth Rollins comes back and completely exposes how vulnerable even the strongest young stars can be when they're caught off guard by a veteran who knows every single trick in the book. That's the beauty and the terror of what we just witnessed. It showed us that nobody is safe, nobody is untouchable, and the hierarchy of Raw just completely shifted in the span of about 90 seconds. Let me ask you another question before we go deeper into this, because this one is going to really separate the people who understand WWE storytelling from those who don't. Do you think Seth Rollins attacked Bron Breakker because of something Bron did to Seth, or do you think Seth is just making a statement that he's back and he's looking to reclaim his spot at the top of the Raw hierarchy? This is crucial because it changes the entire trajectory of where this story goes from here. Comment below and let me know your theory, because honestly, I think this is going to be the most debated question in the wrestling community for the next several weeks. The intensity in that moment was absolutely unmatched. You could see the security guards and the other backstage officials scrambling to try and separate Seth from Bron, and Seth was absolutely not having it. He kept coming, kept attacking, kept destroying Bron with everything he had. And the look on his face? That wasn't just anger. That was rage. That was someone who had something to prove, and he was going to prove it right then and there, no matter what anyone else thought about it. What really bothers me about the aftermath of this attack is that nobody seems to be talking about the long-term consequences of what this means for Bron Breakker. The young man was just absolutely embarrassed on national television by a returning superstar. That's the kind of thing that either pushes someone forward with a hunger to get revenge, or it breaks them down mentally. The mental game in professional wrestling is just as important as the physical game, and Seth knows this. He knows that when you embarrass someone like that in front of the world, it gets in their head. It makes them doubt themselves. And that's a psychological advantage that Seth will carry into whatever match or confrontation happens next. The timing of this return is also something that we need to talk about, because it cannot be a coincidence that Seth is returning right now at this moment in time. There's clearly been some kind of planning that went into when WWE decided to bring him back. Maybe there's something happening with Judgment Day that we don't know about yet. Maybe there's some kind of history between Seth and one of the members of that group. Maybe Seth is making a move towards something huge that we're not even going to see coming. But whatever it is, this return wasn't random. This was calculated. This was strategic. And that's what makes it so exciting. You know what's frustrating to me though? The fact that Bron Breakker might have been positioned as someone who couldn't be taken down, and Seth Rollins just proved that absolutely wrong in one explosive moment. That's the harsh reality of professional wrestling. No matter how dominant you look, no matter how protected you are, if the wrong person catches you at the wrong time, everything can change. And that's exactly what happened here. Seth caught Bron at exactly the right moment, and he made the most of it in absolutely devastating fashion. Let me ask you this because I genuinely want to know your take on this situation. If you were in Bron Breakker's position right now, how would you respond to Seth Rollins? Would you go after him immediately and try to get revenge, or would you take some time to strategize and figure out exactly why he attacked you in the first place? This is the kind of decision that determines whether a superstar becomes a legend or just another guy on the roster. Comment your answer below because this is the exact kind of debate that makes wrestling fans so passionate. The way Seth Rollins moved during that attack showed that he hasn't lost a single step since he's been away. If anything, he looked more dangerous than ever. He looked like someone who's been training hard, thinking about his next moves, and absolutely counting down the days until he could get back into action. And now that he's finally back, he's wasting absolutely no time in making an impact. He's not showing up for promos, he's not showing up for interviews, he's showing up to destroy people and send messages that will echo throughout the entire company. This is the kind of moment that gets replayed over and over again on social media. This is the kind of moment that people are going to be talking about in wrestling forums and Discord servers for weeks to come. This is the kind of moment that gets clipped and shared thousands of times because it's that shocking. It's that impactful. It's that important to the overall storyline of Monday Night Raw. What absolutely infuriates me is the lack of security response to this whole thing. I understand that WWE officials want to give the superstars their moment, but there's a point where someone needs to step in and try to prevent serious injury. However, that's also the wrestling business. That's how things work sometimes. You let the drama play out, and the security eventually gets involved after the real damage has been done. It's a fine line, but it's a line that WWE has perfected over decades of doing this. The fact that Seth Rollins chose Bron Breakker as his first victim after returning is absolutely no accident. There's something specific about Bron that made him the target. Maybe it's the faction he's part of. Maybe it's something personal. Maybe it's just because Bron represents the future, and Seth is reminding everyone that he's still a major part of the present. Whatever the reason, the choice was deliberate and it was powerful. Here's another question for you because this one really gets into the psychology of what's happening here. Do you think Seth Rollins' return on Raw means we're going to see him at the next major pay-per-view, or do you think WWE might be holding him back for an even bigger moment? This is the kind of strategic thinking that goes into long-term WWE planning, and it's absolutely fascinating to think about. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The absolute brutality of this attack cannot be overstated. Seth Rollins didn't hold back for a second. He didn't do that thing where superstars kind of slow down their attacks after a certain point to prevent real injury. No, Seth was going full force, and that's what makes it so believable and so terrifying. That's what makes you believe that he's genuinely upset about something and that there's genuine animosity between him and Bron Breakker. I'm also fascinated by what this means for Bron's current storylines and feuds. He was positioned as this dominant force, this guy who was going to main event pay-per-views and contend for championships. But now there's a question mark hanging over his head because he just got absolutely destroyed by a returning veteran. That's the kind of thing that changes the entire direction of a superstar's career, either for better or worse. The production quality of this whole segment was absolutely top-notch. The way WWE filmed the attack, the angles they used, the way they captured Seth's facial expressions, and the pure intensity in his eyes, all of it was perfect. This isn't just some random backstage segment. This is a carefully produced moment designed to make you feel a specific way, and it absolutely works. It makes you angry. It makes you excited. It makes you desperate to see what happens next. Let me ask you one more important question that's going to really get people talking in the comments. Do you think this attack on Bron Breakker means that Seth Rollins is going to be feuding with Judgment Day as a whole, or is this purely about his issue with Bron? Because that answer changes absolutely everything about the direction of Raw for the next several months. If it's Judgment Day, we could be looking at some major multi-person matches down the line. If it's just Bron, we're looking at a one-on-one feud that could be absolutely incredible. Let me know your prediction. The sound design during this attack was also incredible. You could hear the impact of every punch, every shot that Seth landed. It wasn't like some of those segments where it's hard to tell what's actually connecting and what's not. No, this was clear, this was visceral, and it was absolutely undeniable. That's the kind of attention to detail that goes into making these segments feel real and impactful. What's also interesting is the fact that this attack happened backstage rather than in the ring. That makes it feel more real, more personal, more dangerous. It's not a scripted match with rules and referees. It's just two superstars and the absolute chaos that ensues when one of them decides to attack the other without warning. That's raw professional wrestling at its finest, and that's exactly what made this segment so powerful. I also want to talk about the implications for the rest of the Raw roster because when something like this happens, everyone else on the show has to be thinking about their own situation. Everyone else has to be wondering if they could be next. Everyone else has to be reassessing their own position in the hierarchy knowing that Seth Rollins is back and he's in a destructive mindset. That's the ripple effect of a moment like this, and it affects the entire dynamic of the show. The way Bron Breakker was positioned before this attack is also important context. He was being built up as this unbeatable force, this generational talent that WWE was going to build the company around. And then Seth Rollins comes back and absolutely deconstructs that narrative in about 90 seconds. That's the power of a well-timed return and a well-executed attack. It completely changes the momentum and the direction of multiple storylines simultaneously. Here's the thing that I keep coming back to that absolutely bothers me. If Seth Rollins can do this to Bron Breakker, what does that mean for the rest of the mid-card and upper mid-card talent on Raw? How many people are now terrified that they could be next? How many superstars are now second-guessing their own safety and their own position on the roster? That's the psychological impact of a moment like this, and it's absolutely devastating in the best way possible. The expression on Seth's face after the attack was completely telling. He didn't look satisfied, he didn't look done, he looked like he was just getting started. That's the kind of character work that separates a good segment from an absolutely incredible one. Seth wasn't celebrating, he wasn't taking a victory lap, he was just staring down at the destruction he'd caused.